Okay, so I'm here in my pajamas because it's way too late and this is the only time I could get this filmed. But another year has gone by already, and I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, 2025 felt like trying to solve a Sudoku puzzle while repeatedly being kicked in the head by a horse. By now, I've done this a bunch of times. This will be the best and worst things that I have read this year. This will not be books that necessarily came out this year. In fact, I don't know if I read anything that came out this year now that I'm thinking about it. But that I read over 50, and there were some that were good, some that were bad, some that were painful in a fun way. I'll just say up front, this year was pretty mid as far as books went. Like, there were a couple of real stinkers in there, but there weren't a whole lot of great ones. But, if you want to hear more specifics, then we'll go through each category. Let's get started.
I promise, as long as you're with me, you'll never get hurt.
So the least subtle book I read this year was very easily Daughter of the Blood. Now, this one was really bad, okay? Like, this is a bad book, but it was really, really fun. It's fantasy, and I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot to say about it beyond some of the funny bits. Like, there's a villain in this book whose name, he's like the High Lord of Hell, and his name is literally Satan Damon Sa Diablo. Like, that's his name.
I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
Or how about how sometimes women, with their magical wiles and evilness, will try to control really powerful magical men by putting these magic rings around their, well, you can probably guess where. And then when they disobey them, it causes really, really severe pain for them. Which is, I guess that does make sense, but it also made me laugh and shake my head and just go, what? Like, this is so strange. Now, I'll get a bit more into this book later, but it wasn't very good, but it did make me laugh, and I enjoyed it. Like, what was the plot? I don't know. I read the damn thing, and I barely understood what was going on, but it was just the least subtle book. Okay, that's the main thing. Again, the villain is called Satan Damon Sa Diablo. The women in this world, not all, but a lot of them control men via literally their manhood. And it's just, I don't know, there's no subtext or anything here, but it was kind of enjoyable. The best book I read this year that I enjoyed, but I know will inevitably get really bad in the sequels, is The Program by Suzanne Young. Yeah, I'm going to read the sequels within the next, couple of weeks. I'm going to get started. And the book has a very interesting premise. I'll grant it that. It's in the near future, and there's been an epidemic of teens committing suicide, and so they created this thing called The Program, which is government-run, or at least government-sanctioned, where if they think teens are a risk to themselves, they will take them away and literally erase a bunch of their memories and a bunch of their personality.
Ooh, that's bad.
And it's terrible, but it also does seem to be helping stem the amount of suicides that are happening.
That's good.
So this book is very much a product of the young adult dystopia craze that came around in the early 2010s after the Hunger Games got big, and it is very clearly trying to emulate some of that, but it's also kind of doing its own thing. And the first book simultaneously felt like it was way too long and really rushed, and I'm not quite sure where the sequels are going to go with this, but again, just the idea of a bunch of teenagers committing suicide and what would we do with that as a society that's an interesting question, because they don't know exactly what's causing it. And to be honest, I hope the sequels never reveal that. Obviously, don't post unmarked spoilers in the comments, guys, please. I feel I shouldn't have to say that, but don't do that. And I kind of hope the sequels never deal with that, because I hope it just explores this idea of, yeah, society is in a bad spot. We have this big problem, and how do we fix it? And The Program is horrible, but if it's working, then it's kind of hard to be mad at it. But I just know that because it is a young adult novel, because it's a trilogy that is cashing in on the Hunger Games, I just know that it's gonna bring in even more love triangle nonsense in the sequels, because the first book had that, and they're probably going to have the problem resolved in a really stupid way. But just for now, at least, I can just say, like, yeah, I enjoyed the first book. The biggest quality drop I saw in a book series I read this year was Angel Burn by L.A. Weatherly. And yeah, that was a disappointment, because the first book wasn't amazing, right? Like, it didn't start off amazing, but, and in fact, there's a lot of stuff I'll complain about in there. And my video on this, it's going to be a very brief summary. It should be out sometime in January is what I'm currently aiming for, but we'll just have to wait and see. And yeah, it's not terrible. It's not awful, but there's a huge drop from book 1 to book 3, because in book 1, the main thing that stood out to me, and the main part that started making me think, like, wow, this is actually pretty good, and not just kind of clumsily written standard young adult fare, is that the villains are genuinely a really big and imposing threat. Like, I don't want to get into it too much here, because I'm saving that for another video, but basically, in the first book, like, angels are the bad guys here, and in the first book, at first they seem like, okay, they're just going around taking out a couple of people here and there, but after a certain point, we realize, like, oh no, there are millions of these guys all over, and they have a lot of power and control over the world already. How are the heroes gonna deal with this? And they come across as, like, genuinely a really big threat. And so even if it was clumsy in some other ways, like the writing itself isn't that good, the books are way too stretched out and repetitive in some ways, and I don't think any of the characters are really all that interesting or compelling. I don't think the romance is very good. But even in spite of all of that, the fact that the stakes were so high made me think that, okay, yeah, this is actually pretty good. But then you get to the second book, and it brings in a lot of love triangle bullshit. And it's not just that it focuses on the love triangle stuff too much, and in fact, it doesn't focus on it for, like, a huge percentage of the page count. It's still too much in my opinion, but, like, not for a huge percentage of the book. It's just that the love triangle BS makes everyone dumber and meaner. And I'm not going to get into heavy spoilers here, but basically, when main character girl meets the new leg of the love triangle, his name is Sebastian, or Seb, she tells him right up front, like, hey, I'm already in love with this other guy, there's not going to be anything between us, we can just be friends. And Seb seems okay with that, and in fact, he largely is okay with that throughout the whole series, but then, not long after that, her boyfriend just gets jealous for literally no reason, and he gets really just mean and controlling towards her, and it just made me dislike him a lot, whereas before that he was fine. And then we reach the third book, which is supposed to be the big climax of the whole story, and by the third book, the only reason the villains seem intimidating or imposing or seem like a threat at all is just because the heroes are stupid. Again, not getting into a lot of details here, but basically, at the beginning of the third book, they have a chance to just take the bad guys out right then and there, and that would solve all their problems, but they decide not to do anything, and then while they're busy not doing anything, the villains get into a more advantageous position, and they're like, oh no, how are we going to save the world now? And then the book just goes on like that for a while, and they don't have any intelligent plans to save the day. They just have some last-second bullshit that comes out of nowhere, and some plot MacGuffins and stuff. And again, there's more to come in my very brief summary. That'll be a much longer and much more in-depth video, but, like, man, just a huge, huge drop in quality in Angel Burn. The most annoying thing I read this year was technically not a book, it was a manga series. It's called Ral Grad, or Ral Omega Symbol Grad. I don't know, it's only 4 volumes long, so it's not that long, and I actually read it because I was a guest on the Shonen Flop podcast, which you can go watch that episode if you want. In fact, you should go listen to that podcast in general, because it's a fun podcast. They have some fun guests and fun episodes and stuff. They basically just talk about really weird and bad manga. How does one describe Ral Grad? I guess the best way to put it would just be that a horny teenager gets dragon powers and then gets let out of prison, and then he tries to save the world via anime nonsense. That is the only way I can describe Ralgrad. And that might sound kind of fun if you're like into anime nonsense or something, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do anime nonsense, and it's just, this was the wrong way.
This sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks.
None of the characters have any personality beyond just being really in your face about everything. Like, main character dude is naked most of the time for some reason. All of his dialogue is either about boobs or a weird inconsistent magic system, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In fact, a lot of the other characters' dialogue is about boobs or a weird inconsistent magic system as well. The fights aren't particularly good. I thought the art style was enjoyable. I will say that. I like the art style. But other than that, like, we even say in that episode of the podcast, like, it's just annoying. Yeah, it's annoying. I don't want to read this bullshit. I honestly don't even want to talk about it that much more, because I feel I said everything I had to say on that podcast episode. Once again, go check it out. And I just don't have a lot to say. Like, everyone here is annoying, and the whole story doesn't make a lot of sense. The world building doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just irksome to go through. The best funny bad book I read this year, like one that is really bad but in a fun and enjoyable way, is gonna be Falling Under, and its sequel, Dreaming Awake. In a lot of ways, this book series is just standard paranormal romance from the late aughts and early 2010s, right? Like, just like the program is clearly aping on The Hunger Games, this one is clearly aping on Twilight and all of the many paranormal romance books and series that came out after that were kind of trying to cash in on the success of Twilight. And yeah, the setup and everything for it seems that way. Like, a regular teen girl meets a half-demon boy, and then they fall in love, there's romance, and there's other mayhem that ensues. So, from a broad perspective, yeah, it does seem like just another one of those. But then it includes a lot of individual scenes that are just so weird and out there that I couldn't help but laugh at them. We got scenes like some school bells went off, and they were like so loud and they couldn't figure out how to turn them off that all the students were like running outside and breaking windows to escape from the noise, and then they brought in a police SWAT team and they shot the bells with a sniper rifle. I feel like there were other ways they could have turned those off, but okay. Or how main character girl accidentally becomes her demon boyfriend's sister, kind of, because she, like, accepts blood from his mom, and now, like, his mom's blood is in her, so, like, she's kind of his sibling. They never bring that up. She also later becomes his stepsister, because Demon Boy's mom starts dating main character girl's dad, and then at the end, she, spoilers if anyone cares, she absorbs his mom's soul and takes on her powers and kind of becomes his mom, so it's like, it's triple incest. There's also, like, this weird sequence where basically she can only see Demon Boy when she's asleep, and it's not working, so she tries to induce deeper sleep by taking a bunch of sleeping pills, and then her dad finds her, and he thinks that she attempted suicide, and so his response to that is to tell her a story about how he kind of resents her because by having her is how her mom died, and then he doesn't follow this up by getting her any medical help or anything. Like, you should watch my video on this, because that was a fun one to make, but geez, dude, there's just so many scenes like that spread throughout the books that I couldn't help but just laugh a hearty amount. If it weren't for that, it would be a bad book series, but I did enjoy this one. The runner-up for the best funny bad book I read this year was one I mentioned earlier, Daughter of the Blood. Now, apparently, that Sarah J. Maas read this book, and that was a big part of her inspiration to write A Court of Thorns and Roses, and you can tell. Like, believe me, you can tell. Now, Daughter of the Blood, like, it is very, erotica-esque, I guess what I would call it. Like, I don't know if I would just straight up call it porn, but it does come close to that at a few points. Like, it is very R-rated in terms of the sex scenes and stuff. But, like, you can tell that this inspired ACOTAR. I will give it this, though. There's an actual plot. It's not a very good plot, and it's convoluted, and I didn't really understand it that well while reading, and months later, I don't remember anything about what happened. But, like, there's an actual plot with stakes and characters that have motivations and stuff, so, like, it is still a step above a lot of romantasy nonsense that you people make me read these days. But, I mean, again, it's not at all subtle. It's basically erotica, but it is really funny. As I mentioned before, there's a villain named Satan Damon Sa Diablo, which the first time I read that, I literally laughed out loud. Or the magical cock rings, or the weird level of horniness that's in a lot of inappropriate spots throughout the whole book. Like, again, I had no idea what the plot was. It's nonsense, but I don't know. I had fun with it. Not as much fun as Falling Under, but it was still an enjoyable read. The best science fiction I read this year was Dauntless by Jack Campbell. Now, I feel like this deserves an asterisk next to it because this is also pretty much the only science fiction I read this year. Yeah, it wasn't a lot of stiff competition. That said, I still liked Dauntless. It's military sci-fi, which is a genre I enjoy, and I didn't read a whole lot of this year. Basically, it's about a guy who's in the middle of a space war. He winds up being cryogenically frozen for about 100 years, I think, and then he gets found and unfrozen, and he became a legendary hero because of his actions in his final battle, and everyone thought he was dead, and then he comes back, and now he's basically helping to lead this space navy to victory. The author actually said it was inspired by the story of King Arthur, where like you have a legendary leader who went away but will come back one day. And I got to read the rest of the series as well, but I liked it. It had heart to it, is one thing I want to point out. Like, the hero, there's a lot of points where him and the people he's working with are tempted to do horrifying shit, like war crimes and such, but he has a conscience and he says, no, we are not doing that. And he also has, like, logical reasons for not doing it. Like, a lot of people seem to think that war crimes are like a win the war easy button, and no, it's oftentimes just the opposite. Like, there's a lot of reasons why we have laws of war nowadays where we didn't used to, but that's a separate discussion. But basically, it has heart to it. Main character guy is a solid protagonist who I liked to follow, and I don't know, I want to check out the sequels, but I liked Dauntless. That's about all I have to say. The best TikTok slop that I read this year was Lights Out. Now, was Lights Out amazing? Well, no, but it knew it was dumb. I think that's the main thing to say about it. Like, it's basically just about this guy who, his father was a famous serial killer, so he has trouble dating because people know who he is, and when they find out who his family is, he either only attracts weirdos or they're put off by that. And then there's main character girl who's just kind of weird in her own way, and then they meet and they fall in love, and then erotic stuff happens. Like, it's a dumb book, but the book knew it was dumb. The author understood the assignment, I believe is how the kids put it these days. Like, the author knew, like, yeah, this is just erotica nonsense. We're not going to pretend it's super deep or anything. We're just going to show this, and the book did have a sense of humor about itself. Like, it pointed out that there was some weird stuff happening and that the two leads are extremely strange people, but they match each other's freaks, so it works out. There's an actual plot here, too, and it's okay. Like, there's a hateable villain. He's not, like, deep or complex or anything, but he is appropriately hateable. And the main characters do things that, for the most part, kind of make sense. There are events which actually lead into one another. They don't just sort of happen. The plot is okay. The characters, while again they're not super deep or realistic, they do at least have personalities, and they have arcs that they go through over the course of the story. And even if I don't remember their names off the top of my head, I do at least remember what they were like and what they did. And I don't know, it's just, Lights Out was a good time. The most overhated book I read this year was To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. Like, I thought this one was alright. That's the main thing I have to say about it. But it kind of blew up a while ago because people were calling it a quote-unquote colonizer romance, and most people who were upset about it didn't read the frickin' book, let's be clear about that. But a lot of them were just upset because the plot is about one group of people from one dimension coming to a fantasy world and colonizing it and taking over and doing a lot of horrible stuff, and main character girl is like falling in love with one of the colonizing leaders. And it's a lot more complicated than that. Like, people were upset because how dare this author try and show complicated human emotions in this setting? Don't they know that they have to listen to me, a random person on the internet who is always looking to get outraged? Like, that's what it came across as to me. But the relationship between main character girl and Antony Augustus, that's actually his name, because it's a vaguely Roman Empire-esque group of people, whatever. Like, main character girl and Antony Augustus, their relationship is very explicitly a toxic one. Like, neither of them is a good person, and the book acknowledges that neither of them is a good person, and that their relationship is bad for both of them. Like I said in my review of it many months ago, I said that main character girl is a bad person who, or rather she does bad things out of desperation, whereas Antony, he does bad things out of idealism. Like, he genuinely thinks that if he can become more powerful, if he can be in charge, then he can fix things and he can make the world better. And I don't think the book does a great job of exploring that, and I don't think the book does a great job exploring their toxic dynamic, but, like, it's there, and it's very explicit. Like, it's not exactly subtle. It's right in your face. If you missed that while reading, I gotta wonder if you were paying any attention. But again, most of the people who were upset didn't actually read it. They heard someone else say that it was a bad colonizer romance, and then they got upset based on out-of-context bits of information. It's just not done that well. And the author also very straightforwardly said that the colonization that happens was based on the Japanese colonization and occupation of Manchuria. And, like, okay, that's also kind of interesting, but while the colonization in the book is, again, very explicitly and straightforwardly said to be bad, it doesn't even come close to the levels of what the Japanese did in China.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
So, I don't know. I feel that the book had a lot of potential to be better than it was, but it was still fine. And it was very overhated. I don't know, it just... I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to all the hate before I read it, but then after I read it, I looked a bit more into it, and I was like, guys, you people are getting way too worked up over this, and you are just missing the point a lot of the time. The best romance in a book I read this year, not the best romance book, but the best romance in a book I read this year, was Varen and Isabel from Nevermore. Only the first book of Nevermore, though. Because in that book, which, again, I have a whole long video about that series if you want to read it, or if you want to watch it, but in that book, Varen is kind of like a weird goth outcast without a lot of friends, and Isabel is a preppy cheerleader who is dating a football player. And they both have some very harsh and judgmental opinions of each other at the beginning. Like, they both jump to conclusions. Like, Varen assumes that Isabel is vain and stupid, but she's really not. She's actually a lot nicer than he thought she was at first, which is kind of why he falls in love with her. Simultaneously, Isabel thinks Varen is weird and creepy, but then she gets to know him a bit, and she realizes, okay, no, he's actually a really nice and sensitive and thoughtful guy. So both of them jump to conclusions about the other, and then they both realize that they were wrong, and it's just really sweet to watch them get over that. However, this is really only in the first book. After the first book, they are separate for almost the entire rest of the series, and it just doesn't go into any other details about their romance. But in that first book, I did genuinely enjoy it. The main thing I would complain about is that, for some reason, a lot of books like this really, really like to have the leads just jump into saying I love you way too quickly and deciding, yes, this person is my everything, they are my soulmate, I will die for them. Like, they can just have feelings towards each other. Like, you don't have to drop the I love you in the first book, especially if the characters have only known each other for, like, 2 weeks or something. Like, they can just be in the process of falling in love and then not reach it until the end, but whatever, that's a topic for another time. The worst romance in a book I read this year is Juliet and Warner from the Shatter Me series. My thoughts on the two of them can be summed up very quickly and easily. he imprisoned and tortured her for a year, but he's hot, so it's okay. Like, the later books just retcon a whole bunch of shit that he did near the beginning so that they can just come out and say, no, it's actually fine. He actually didn't do any of that nasty stuff that you thought he did, which, granted, what he really did was still pretty bad, but whatever. The books just retcon it, and then him and Juliet have, like, weird, pointless arguments at a couple of points. Like, she gets upset that he's not a virgin, and she is at one point, which, like, okay, like, they're both old enough that that's not super weird in either direction, really, because they're only like 17 or 18 at that point, so it's not weird to be a virgin, and it's not weird to not be a virgin at that age. Whatever, the point is, like, there's just stupid arguments which don't add anything, it's just there to pad out the page length, but mostly it's that he tortured her for a year, and then they just kind of sweep that under the rug. It was bad. It was really bad.
Disappointed!
The best fantasy I read this year, kind of similar to best sci-fi. I didn't read a whole lot of fantasy this year, so it wasn't stiff competition, but I will say the best fantasy I read this year was Trill. Yeah, okay, Trill is enjoyable for what it is, and it is a fantasy book, but, I mean, it's granted urban fantasy. It's like a hidden magical world in the real world, but still, that counts. Basically, it's about main character girl who finds out she's actually a changeling, like she was a troll who was switched with a human baby right after she was born, and then she goes into the hidden magical world, and she has to take over and become a queen and stuff. And if that sounds generic, yes, it is in many ways, but the books have some heart to them. You know, the characters are kind of interesting and have a little bit of depth and complexity and personality to them, and main character girl especially is a genuinely kind and intelligent person who wants to use her powers as queen to help people and better the world around her, so I did appreciate that. The world building, for the most part, did make perfect sense. There were some interesting ideas brought up, like how, yeah, this society is a monarchy, and it has a pretty strict social hierarchy, but, like, can something like that even survive into the modern day? And it basically says that if they hold to their traditions too much, then eventually they will die out. That's an interesting idea, and so they wind up having to change things around. Like, and there's an actual conflict. Again, the villain here isn't super complicated. His motivations are just that he's the villain and wants to take stuff over, but there's an actual conflict there, and it does get an appropriate amount of screen time, and the love triangle nonsense is not as bad as it could have been, so yeah, I mean, Trill was enjoyable for what it was, and that makes it the best fantasy I read this year. The biggest, wow, they went there moment of this year, like a moment from a book that I read that made me just stop and go, whoa, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting it to be that dark or anything, is the truck massacre from Article 5. Now, technically, I did read the first 2 Article 5 books last year, and I didn't finish the series until this year, and I don't think I spoke about them at all in my last Best and Worst video, so fuck it, we're counting them for this year. Article 5 is yet another bad young adult dystopia about an evil government that is evil because it is evil, and then we have the heroic, plucky rebels who want to overthrow the evil government that is evil because it is evil because they, like, want freedom, you know? Like, it's really vague and not super well thought out, and again, I have an hour-long video on this series if you want to know more of my thoughts, but there is a scene in the first book where the characters are hiding out in an abandoned town, and then a truck comes up, and it's being driven by soldiers, and then the soldiers march out a bunch of people that they've taken prisoner, and immediately just gun them all down, and presumably bury them in a mass grave. And I was like, wow, holy shit, this book got a lot darker than I was expecting it to.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Because normally in books like this, the government will be evil, but they'll never really show the kind of truly heinous stuff that dictatorial regimes will do in order to stay in control and to stay in power, and to snuff out dissent and things of that nature. But this one really went there. Like, yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to say, and the whole rest of the series, unfortunately, never dives into this sort of thing again. Like, the government is, again, just kind of generically evil from this point forward, but this one moment, at least, really hit me. I was like, wow, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't expect them to do that. And if it had had a few more moments like that, then I guess maybe it could have come across as, like, edgelord nonsense, but man, if it had a few more moments like that, I think the books really would have been something special. So the best book I read this year. Unfortunately, like I said, not a lot of stiff competition this year. It was a pretty mid-year, and unfortunately, for various reasons, which I don't want to get into here, I was just straight up having trouble reading at a lot of points. But the best book I read this year is After the Revolution by Robert Evans. This book is a really dark and disturbing look at a future America. Like, it basically takes something like Article 5, but it's played more for adults, and it is not afraid to dive into more dark stuff, more serious stuff, and it also takes itself a bit more seriously, and stuff that happens is a bit more literal, or excuse me, a bit more realistic. As the title implies, this is after there was already some sort of conflict that broke apart the United States. It's now split into a couple of other countries, and we never get like a full list of what they all are and what they all look like, but we don't really need one because it's mostly just focused on Texas.
Hey, Patrick, what am I now?
Stupid!
And even though the revolution is over, there's still a lot of war and a lot of poverty and just a lot of general shittiness in what used to be the United States. And the story is about the heroes fighting off a bunch of religious extremists who are pretty clearly meant to be based on ISIS. And I don't know, I liked how it went. I liked the characters for the most part. There was one girl in there who, she was a little too naive and stupid at the beginning. Like, she got involved with the religious extremists way too easily, and I don't know, I mentioned this in my review of it, but honestly, I don't know, maybe it's because I've been surrounded by Christian conservatives my whole life, and I know what they're like, and I know not to ever trust them, but seeing someone fall into that trap was weird, and it wasn't written super well. But other than that, I didn't have a lot to complain about. It was just a really good, enjoyable, solid book, and I look forward to the sequels whenever those come. And now for the thing that many of you came here for, the worst book I read this year. And just for fun, we're gonna do a whole lot more than just one book here. So I'll start off with the runner-up, the second worst thing I read this year, The Awakening, which is the first book in the Zodiac Academy series. I can describe this book very, very simply. It is Harry Potter, but there's also porn. That's it. And granted, if you're at all familiar with Harry Potter fanfiction or stuff like the Snape Wives, then you know that Harry Potter is no stranger to porn. But this is Harry Potter with the serial numbers filed off, and the porn is baked in directly. It's not part of the fandom. Like, we have some orphans who live on Earth who discover that they're special, and then they go to a magic school. And that's kind of it. Yeah, basically, imagine the first Harry Potter book with everything being done worse. Like, the characters have nothing to them except that they are born as the special chosen ones. Like, that's all there is to them. There's two POV characters. They're twins. I could not tell you anything about them that is different from one another. I could not tell you anything about their personalities or their dreams or their motivations or anything other than they're poor at the beginning and they don't want to be poor, which, like, fair enough, but there's nothing else there. There is no plot in this book. None. I don't mean that there's only a couple of things that happen and then it focuses on romantic hijinks throughout most of it. I mean, there is no plot at all. Like, there's a cliffhanger at the end where someone dies and it promises that there will be plot later, but there's no actual plot. The closest thing we have to, like, any sort of antagonists is that there's bullies who act like they're 12 years old, Like the characters are all college aged, and one of the mean things that the bullies do to one of the main characters is they cut off a chunk of her hair, which, like, again, if you're 12 years old, then I guess that would be heartbreaking, but you guys are like 18 or 19, that would just be more annoying than anything. As I said a minute ago, there are two POV characters, but they all kind of do the same thing. So, like, everything just repeats. Like, every chapter that we go back and forth, it feels like I just am rereading the same chapter again with some of the names being different. Like, one of the characters goes to join one of the magical houses because there's 4 magic houses at this magic school because, again, Harry Potter. And then she goes through a hazing ritual and she makes it in. And then the next chapter is her sister joining a different magic house and going through a similar hazing ritual, and then she makes it in. And then there's a chapter later on where one of them has a weird sexual thing going on with a hot fairy dude. And then the next chapter, the other one has a weird sexual thing going on with a different hot fairy dude. Like, it's just repeating itself. Like, you could literally just cut out every other chapter and the book would be half the length and it would make exactly as much sense as it does now. There are no stakes to the story, because, like, what happens if they fail? Or can they even fail? Not really. There are no real villains. There's no good dialogue or prose. There's no reason to like anyone. It's just lazy. Okay, it is lazy, it is stupid, it is annoying. It's just bad in every way that a book can be bad. And that's why it is the second worst book this year. And now The Heater is coming on. And I'll get to the worst book I read this year in a minute, but before that, let's go through some dishonorable mentions. Silver Elite. This book has the dumbest protagonist from anything I have ever read. And even besides that, the book itself is just complete nonsense. Like, the psychic powers that some people have make no sense. The characters have no motivations whatsoever for doing what they do. Like, it's very obviously just an excuse to have the main character be in a school, in a military training setting because she's like 20 years old, so that she can have sex with her superior officer, and that's apparently allowed in this situation because this book is dumb and nothing about it makes sense. But, like, everything is just an excuse for that. And also we gotta show that, oh, she's a rebel, but she kind of forgets that she's one of the rebels very quickly, and then she joins the evil government's army, but not of her own free will. She actually is forced to join because they found out her uncle was a rebel, but if they were going to punish the family members of rebels, wouldn't they just send her to prison or a forced labor camp, or just execute her? That would, make sense as something that a despotic government would do, but no, I guess we gotta let the plot happen, so that's there. Or main character girl straight up sending one of her friends to a forced labor camp, but she's portrayed as being a good person because the alternative would just be them being killed, which, like, I guess that's technically true, but it's also her fault that they're in trouble, so she's just kind of a nasty person. And I'm not gonna go on any longer, or we'll be here for way too long, but just, man, Silver Elite was terrible. Dark Harvest, picture unrelated. Pay no attention to this stuff about the author here. That's not important. Basically, there's nothing here, man. There is nothing about Dark Harvest to say. Like, a bad YouTuber ripped off some other movies and then changed nothing. Like, just copy and pasted script ideas and stuff from movies and books that he's read before. Didn't bother changing anything. Didn't give the characters anything resembling a personality. Like, there was no effort put in here. Like, I almost want to call it the worst thing I read this year, but honestly, it's not even bad enough to warrant that. Like, if it was bad, that would be something. But it's not. There is just nothing here, man. Quicksilver. So this one I did actually consider putting in the #1 spot this year, but after thinking it over a bit, I feel that, if nothing else, the climax was kind of decent. Like, once we got into just having some actual action and having the characters have a clear goal that they're working towards and they're fighting against these evil villains who are genuinely, like, bad, hateable villains. I thought that bit at the end was okay, so I think that is enough to bump it up. But man, it was kind of close at times, because this one drags forever. The book is way too long. A decent editor could cut out like 30% of it without losing anything. The main character is like too super special, although I will grant that she has to at least train a little bit with her powers before she can use them effectively. Like, she doesn't just know how to do it immediately, so I'll give her that. But she's still like the uber super special main character who is the linchpin of all reality, and everything revolves around her, so it's just too much. And overall, it's supposed to be an adult novel. Like it's supposed to be, again, erotica. There are hardcore sex scenes in there, but it just, outside of those scenes, it gives off way too much young adult energy, and not in a good way. So, yeah, Quicksilver is just miserable to get through, and I did not like it. That's all. I can't even think of anything clever or quippy to say there. Just, I didn't like Quicksilver. It was really bad. And now, the moment that many of you have been waiting for, or maybe you just skipped ahead to this part of the video. You suck a little bit. You're destroying my watch time. Come on, man. But the moment many of you have been waiting for, the worst book that I read this year. Drum roll, please. Maybe try and take a guess at it, if you feel so inclined. Worst book I read, Blood of Hercules. Man, what can I say here that I haven't said about any of this other stuff before? It has the annoyance of Rahl Grad. It has the lack of imagination of stuff like Dark Harvest or Quicksilver or Silver Elite or Zodiac Academy. Like, that's a common theme with all the worst books, is that they have a lack of imagination. It has the super special, ultra cool main characterness of Quicksilver. It has the dumb main character of Silver Elite. Like, it's all of the worst parts of all the worst books that I've read for several years just mashed together. If you don't believe me when I tell you that Blood of Hercules is awful in every way, I'm just going to tell you right now, the book has 4 prologues.
Why? Why?
Like, there's one pointless prologue where an oracle just comes out and says a prophecy, which is very obviously aimed at the super ultra special main character. There's a second prologue, which is literally just pure exposition, explaining the world and where it came from, which is never a good way to start your book. The third prologue is about main character girl meeting her invisible snake friend, who she keeps throughout the book. And honestly, even though she has the invisible snake friend, I kept forgetting about her for most of the book. And then the fourth prologue is about her meeting her adopted younger brother and getting her mean foster dad arrested. Not for abusing her, which, you know, would make sense for him to be arrested for, but actually her foster mom gets killed by a monster, but she just says that her dad did it, and then he's immediately imprisoned for life without any trial or anything. Like, this, like, 10 or 11-year-old girl just says he did a murder, and that's it.
That doesn't make sense.
Now, the main character is named Alexis, and she is a Greek god, except all of the Greek gods are referred to as Spartans for some reason, instead of just calling them gods or Olympians or something. I don't know. This book is vaguely based on Greek myth, but it's so different than the myths that I'm not even sure why they bothered. Like, they could literally change the names and I wouldn't have even realized that it was supposed to be based on Greek myths, because all of the gods and everything are not related they were in the original myths, and they didn't do any of the stuff that they're known for in the original myths. It's just, I'm not sure why they would use their names. Like, there's just a really powerful guy whose name is Zeus, and he's known for, like, philandering and being boisterous and full of himself, and, like, you could just call him anything else. I wouldn't even know that he was Zeus, to be honest with you. Alexis is just way too much of a super special self-insert Mary Sue character. Like, just way too much in every way. Every man is really, really mean to her. They're all big jerks and bullies, but they also all want to fuck her. And at the end, for various convoluted reasons, she is forced to marry 2 of them against her consent, and then has sex with both of them to cement the marriage. again, without her really wanting to do it. This is an act known as rape, but I guess they're hot, so we're supposed to be cool with it. Like, the whole marriage thing is quite possibly the dumbest part of the book, because she doesn't know any of the laws surrounding any of this, but she accepts a gift from someone, and then people tell her, like, oh, well, you accepted a gift, that means you're accepting the engagement, and she can't just go, like, well, I didn't know that just the plot must happen. The romance must happen, so it's going on, and it just makes everyone involved look terrible. Alexis wants to train really hard and join the Spartans in their society, but, like, why? She has no motivation for wanting this. Like, she doesn't want to be poor, which she is at the beginning, which, okay, sure, that makes sense, but, like, beyond that, like, why am I supposed to care about literally everything that's going on in the story? Because, yeah, there's world-destroying monsters out there, but who gives a shit about that? We're here to watch her deal with bullies and mean dudes who want to have sex with her, and just... Okay, why am I supposed to care about this? She's also the daughter of Hades and Persephone. Like, again, she's a person who thought she was a regular human. Turns out she's actually a god/demigod sort of thing. She's the daughter of Hades and Persephone. She has an invisible snake friend that no one else can see, but the invisible snake friend helps her out, and she has all the cool powers, and all the boys like her. Like, she's just a very obvious self-insert out of old bad fanfiction or old role-playing forums. Like, I don't know, man. Blood of Hercules is bad to the point where I can't even really be mad at it, because in order to be mad at it, number one, I would have to see some sort of potential to it. Like, I would have to see some sort of potential where I was like, okay, this could have been a good story, but then you went off in a dozen stupid directions, or you were just being lazy with it or something, and that's what would annoy me about it, but that's not going on here. It was just shit from the beginning. And also, it's bad in the same way as everything else that I read that was bad this year, but it's just kind of worse. You know, it is the worst thing here, but it doesn't even really stand out at all. And so for that reason, Blood of Hercules is the worst thing I read this year. Like, I can't even be mad, I can't even be disappointed. Like, it's just really, really terribly put together in every way. And obviously none of the characters have any real personality or motivation. The plot is pretty much non-existent. Like, there's nothing to like about Blood of Hercules, and there's stuff to dislike, but I can't even summon the energy to hate it, which in a way is impressive. So as I said, this wasn't a great year. It wasn't an amazing year for me personally. I don't want to get into that here, but I have had just a difficult time, and the books I read weren't really helping, and it was hard for me to focus and lock in and read as much as I normally do. Thank the gods for audiobooks, is all I'm going to say about that. That allowed me to keep up my release schedule and everything this year. And TikTok Slop, it seems to be getting worse. You know, I've complained about this at great length, so I'm not going to go into it a whole lot here, but TikTok Slop does seem to be getting even worse and even more inbred, as I described it in a different video this year. But also, it seems like maybe it's dying out. You know, maybe. I don't want to give myself too much hope. I don't want to give anyone else too much hope, but, like, maybe it's finally reaching a point where even the people who like this stuff are realizing that it is literally the exact same thing over and over and over again, and rather than just reading the same thing but done worse over time, they could just read ACOTAR for the 5th time if that's what they're into. So maybe this bubble is finally starting to burst, or at least deflate a little bit. But as much as I complained, there are still great books out there. You know, I still read Dauntless and I liked it. I read Trill, and that one, surprisingly, I enjoyed. I kind of liked Falling Under and Daughter of the Blood, although for ironic reasons. I read another one of the Jack Reacher books, which was a lot of fun, like those books usually are. I need to read more Jack Reacher stuff. I want to try doing more videos on that sort of thing, but like I don't think it would get a lot of attention, so it's hard for me to set aside time for it. But just, you know, there's still great books out there, even if a lot of them are older, and I hope to keep reading them. I hope to read more. I hope to in the next year read more terrible young adult novels. I hope to find some hidden gems. I hope to be surprised or pleasantly surprised, I mean, by how good some books are. I hope to laugh at how stupid and up their own ass some books are. And just, I hope you all have a wonderful 2026, or maybe not all of you, but the majority of you. I hope you all have a wonderful time. I wish you all the best. I hope you find the courage to try, and I hope you find the strength to succeed. That's about all. Goodbye. Hello to everyone who watched this entire video and is continuing to watch the end credits. All these names here, these are the names of my patrons. If you want to get your name here, you can go over to patreon.com/JamesTullis and start supporting me. You get things like early access to videos, and it starts at only $1 a month. That's pretty great. My $10 and up patrons are 3 Cat Day, Arthur D. Gonzalez Martin, Brother Santodes, Carolina Clay, Chris Goldapp, Lexi DeLorme, Lord Tiebreaker, Michael and Katie Hake, Mr. A5013, Proscriptions of Zhuojang, PsychXS, Toa Michael, Vevictus, and Wesley. Without these people, I could not do what I do, so I just thank you, all of you, so much from the bottom of my heart. You can also support me via YouTube channel memberships. You'll still get early access to videos, but your name won't be on here. Sorry, YouTube doesn't do a great job of telling me who is a member and where to find them. You can also buy a shout-out from me over on Cameo if you feel like it. If that's not up your alley, I got merchandise at my Fourth Wall store. I got stuff like this lovely t-shirt. I've also got some other stuff over there if you want to check it out. But if you don't feel like doing any of that, then simply liking the video, commenting on it, subscribing to my channel, and just continuing to watch, that's more than enough. That does mean the world to me. Have a lovely day. Goodbye.